Working with DJ-driven music, it needs to fit into a structure that fits with everything else, and that's basically 16-bar blocks. Minor changes maybe every 4 or every 8, and if you go outside of that structure, nobody can mix it, so they don't play it. In terms of the length of the introduction, 32 bars is probably the minimum that you do, maybe 48. So what I'm going to do is build to this point, bar 33. Just doing that will work to build tension, to stick on one chord. That can just sit underneath everything. With these pads, what I want to do is create a feeling of growth. I can do that with filters. If I take the bottom out, so this Murder Melodies has got a high pass and low pass filter built into it. We can open the filter in both directions, but you'd see it get bigger because you're allowing more frequencies to play. So that's something I will often do, starting sort of thick and warm and then gradually opening the tops up. So I've got both filters running. I'm gonna take the bottom out as much as I can before it just disappears. The low pass is at 420 and the others at 319. They're almost on top of each other. There's a very small amount of frequency coming through. And this is the first time I'll actually start to think a bit more about frequencies. And you can just see what we've got here. We've removed all of the tops. So now I have to start thinking a little bit more about EQ to help things fit together. That hook element I'm really into, so I want that to be more prominent. The easiest way to make something more prominent is to boost it at 2 or 3K. Maybe need to take a little bit of top out of this one. But I want the chords to be thick and the hooks to be a bit thinner and a bit on top. So that now stands out in the mix. I maybe have to EQ it down in one particular area after that. That's the bit where it could be a little bit painful, so I'm just going to put a really tight little dip in there and then make the EQ band dynamic. It only works when the sound goes over a volume level of a certain threshold. So you see it only working when it's too loud. And then we've got these chords from the original sample. It's just cutting them, so we've got chord 1 happens twice, then chord 3 and 4 and at the end. So if I get these in here like this, I may not use it right now, but it will fit with what we're doing. I'm going to put loads of Echo Boy, the ping pong delay again. And we can then filter it in gradually. It will sound like it comes closer as the song builds up. Any bass-driven music, you need a strong sub, and this is a strong sub with interesting mids as well. All the harmonics will help it to stand out. So what I need to do is think about what notes we're using all the time in the chords, and that's what I'm going to use for my bass. Following the chords means it's going to work in terms of harmony. Using 3 black notes, D flat, G flat, A flat, B and F. If I move the start point, because it's a long sample, we'll get just a slightly different impact more than anything. It's still going to be the same note, but it's an evolving sample. So if I move it here, that's nice. It's got loads of the harmonics. Not sure how much I want it to be the sampled chords or not. So instead of having it the third chord 3 times, it's more like that repeatedly. The cadence where the chords change is happening more often. I feel like it speeds up almost. What I want to try and do is make space for the vocal and actually cut the bass out entirely at that moment, so we have a little gap. So that's flowing with the chords nicely. the main reason I spent so long building hooks and chords and variations of the same idea, because then it means that the arrangement can progress quite easily by just taking things out and putting them back later, and it doesn't feel like the song is empty when you take things out, because we've got other elements that can work as well. And so what I'm doing now is sketching out 64 bars where the drums and the bass are rolling at least before considering a breakdown. I'm arranging it without listening because I know what everything is. The colours are really important for that. What I'll do is put down a rough idea for an arrangement. I'll go through it and start to decide whether it feels like there's enough happening. Finally, time to make it rhythmic and add some drums. So this is the point where I go into my library. I definitely want something more like this, more rolling, flicky. That's quite a good starting point, actually. I really like that break. It's rolling out and giving us the essence of what we need drum-wise. What the old funk break is going to do is give it a bit of roughness. By squeezing the dynamic range, you end up with more perceived loudness. The kick drum in this one is getting in the way of the others. Bass frequencies that are overlapping each other and they're not playing the same note, or they're playing the same note but they're not in phase, there's going to be problems. This one, I'm not here for the kick, it's all about the tops and shuffles, so I can turn them up a little bit more. Taking out the weight, so it's a little bit lighter. Despite the fact that they're all quite controlled and precise, when you put them all together, there's always going to be volume spikes. And this is where I'm using this oscilloscope to look at. Probably every track, I use the compressor to clip the drums. And you can see there, just by driving it into this distortion, it becomes level again. Now we can check that with the bass and see how they fit together. Generally, the 8th and 4th bars are where the most variation will be. So what I'm doing is using that twice, so the 8th bar isn't quite as varied on the first time around. By building them in 8-bar blocks when I'm doing my pre-production sessions, it makes this so much quicker because I'm not copying one bar again and again, I'm copying 8 bars and it's much easier to read the page. And then I'll bring in a shaker at this point. Just add sort of a burst of energy at that point. And then going to take all the drums twice and then add in more tops, more shakers. The top end will be changing in a subtle way and it holds your attention as a listener without you really knowing why. Just subtle variations of texture mean you kind of have to keep listening. So cut a lot of the drums for that one bar and it makes it feel like it speeds up again when they all kick back in. So there we've got like a very rough outline of the body of the track. So now I have to work out how to link the two parts. So get this sort of the tension and release. I want it to introduce the drum pattern but not give the whole drum pattern away. Stop it 2 bars early. So we create a pause before the drums kick in of elements that would help this build up. The simplest is just to have some sort of rise beforehand. Something that Splice is brilliant for because there are just thousands of them. But if I look in my library, there'll be ones I've already used. So I'm going to cut all the drums when the vocal hits again. I'm going to put all of the hook parts in. So the breakdown moment will feel like a peak, and the part of the development of the song further will be on that idea of how can I use the elements differently when it comes around the second time. I am actually thinking about the way the elements are combining in different parts and having as much of it in the breakdown to then strip back and drop with maybe a lot less. And I will do this kind of a rough outline copy-paste arrangement just so I can decide which bits I like and don't like. That's going to be too little at the moment, but I'm interested in how it feels to drop with almost nothing second time around. What I'm going to do now is turn all the groups down so there's some headroom. reinforcing the message. But at this point, I've kind of tired my ears, tired my brain. I'm not going to make any more particularly good decisions. So what I will do at this point is just export it and throw it into my Dropbox folder so that I can do my analysis completely independently of the computer. Instead of trying to spend another 2 hours pushing and pulling elements about, I can just listen and make notes and say that section doesn't quite work, that section's better, try repeating that. What I'll normally do actually at this point is limit it so it's a bit louder, so it stands up in comparison to other songs, so I could play it in the mix at home. So there you go, Philth, show me demo version 1. Job done.